Welcome to Principles of Business Communication course. We are doing Unit 1 on communication. What is communication? It is considered the transfer of information from one person to another or more by various means. Now, it can also be considered as transfer of information from one group of people to another group of people. Business communication. Today's business survives on communication and it's finding ways to improve that communication both internally and externally. It gives your company a competitive edge. So when we say business communication, it's communication between organizations or firms or companies. Now, this is the communication process basic model. Now, if you look at number 1, sender has an idea that comes in the person's head. The sender encodes the idea in message. When you say encodes the idea, that means they are forming it into a thought in their own language. Now, after they have formulated it into language, the message travels over a channel. Now, traveling over a channel can be in the form of email, SMS, telephone. That can be the different modes of channel. And then the receiver on the other end receives the message and decodes the message. Now, encoding and decoding will be very easy if the encoder sends the message in a language that the receiver also understands. And then the receiver responds by giving a feedback back to the sender, and this is a cycle that can go on and on. Now, the communication process. The sender first has an idea. The sender can be an individual, a group, or an organization, as I said earlier. The sender is initially responsible for the success of the message, and the sender's experiences, attitudes, knowledge, skills, perception, and culture influence the message. So, why do we say the sender is responsible for the success of the message? It's because if the sender does not formulate the message in a way that the receiver can understand easily, it may not be a successful message. Now, encoding the idea in a message means conveying the meaning of the message itself. The sender also decides on the message length, tone, organization style, or symbols into concepts. He must make sure that he takes into consideration on the receiver's part that they will be able to understand the concept or symbols or language that he uses. The message travels over a channel, and as I said, this can be in the form of telephone, letters, reports, emails, notice boards. Video conferencing technology is improving at all times, so there will be more and different methods of communication. Receiver then decodes the message. The receiver can be the individual or individuals to whom the message is directed. This is when the receiver has to interpret and understand the message. The receiver's experiences, attitudes, knowledge, skill, perceptions, and culture helps decode the message. The more the receiver is familiar with the language or mode, or comes from the same background or culture, or is of the same race as the person sending the message, the easier it will be for them to understand. Now, feedback. Feedback is important because it allows the sender to know whether the person who decoded the message understood the message. Also, feedback can be in terms of non-verbal, meaning a facial expression or a head nod or a movement of the hand to show whether the person has understood or not. Now, possible additional feedback to receiver. Once the sender receives feedback, negative or positive, he or she will respond. But you must take note there are factors that can affect feedback. For example, noise. This can happen anytime during the communication process. For example, noise doesn't actually mean physical noise itself. It can be in the form of poor handwriting, or when a person is talking, noise from the background like sirens, or poor lighting that reduces how a person may decode the message because they may not be able to see the words effectively. Now, we go on to modes of communication, which includes thinking, action, observation, speaking, listening, writing, and reading. Now, let's look at them individually. Thinking, it takes place internally. Thinking is a way of communicating with ourselves, and it's a necessary and important component of all other modes of communication, because without thinking, we can't actually communicate in any other method. Action. Now, we always say action speaks louder than words. Facial expressions and body language can communicate effectively and sometimes subconsciously. Sometimes we don't realize we are giving a form of communication when we are frowning, or our eyes look angry, or when we smile. Those are also forms of non-verbal communication. Observation is important if you want to decode body messages. Sigmund Freud, a social scientist, suggested that people tend to practice selective perception, which means we only see what we want to see and we don't bother to see what we do not want to see, or even if we do see it, we only remember what we want to remember and refuse to remember what we do not want to remember. Speaking. Now the average speaking speed is about 125 words per minute, but in some cases what we say, some people may be able to speak much faster. Some people actually speak a lot lower, but that's not what we are concerned with here. When we say speaking, what we are trying to accomplish in business communication is trying to say what you need to say and don't waste time saying unnecessary things. Listening is very important. Try and understand what the speaker is saying between the lines is part of listening. It's not always what the person says. Sometimes a pause, a full stop, or when the person frowns at you, it is also a part of listening and observation, because you want to know what exactly are they trying to say in between the lines itself. Writing does not take up much time, but it makes a permanent record. Writing has to be concise, clear, and to the point. Please do not ever beat around the bush and write excessively. Reading is very important, as every profession or job is subject to critical knowledge. You have to read to understand. Reading regularly is the only way to keep up with what's happening around us and to get ahead with the world. Of course, they always say the more you read, the more knowledgeable you become. Now, the 5 C's of communication. This is a checklist for writing and speaking better. You must have clarity, completeness, conciseness, concreteness, and correctness. Now, let's take a look at them individually. Clarity. Message must always be straightforward, logical, and clear. Your communication must be clear to the recipient. They say KISS meaning keep it short and simple. The shorter and simpler you create your message, the more clear it becomes. Completeness, meaning every time you decide to write or say something, complete your sentence, complete your thought. Do not leave it hanging in the air. Alright? So that is what a process of simplifying and clarifying. Conciseness. Make the communication using simple, carefully selected words. Always remember, think what is it that you want to communicate and then outline that specific message to be delivered. Get rid of unnecessary points or words. Okay, that is being short and concise. Concreteness, meaning do not be abstract and generalized if you are not sure about the actual concrete facts. Always use precise words. General words may have different meanings for the sender than for the receiver. Being specific also helps in being concrete, meaning don't just say tall or short. How short? Or 1.5 meter short. Or how tall? 1.8 meter tall. Don't say going at a high speed. What is high speed? 120 kilometers per hour. Be exact. Okay? And correctness. The use of communication techniques will be a waste if your message is wrong. Incorrect or exaggerated message may serve our immediate purpose but may cost us in the long run. So every time you decide to communicate something, make sure you're talking facts. Make sure your facts are correct itself. Don't say anything that is wrong. And correctness can also be in the sense of spelling. Please make sure you spell people's names correctly, organizations correctly. Sometimes a spelling mistake can mean a wrong word and which has got a different meaning attached to it. Multiple modes of communication. Now, multiple modes of communication means using different modes of communication at the same time, simultaneously. So this is an example would be like during lecture, you're listening to your lecturer, but at the same time you're taking down notes and you are looking at the lecturer and nodding your head to show that you've understood what the lecturer is talking, or frowning to show, teacher, I don't understand what you're talking, or smiling because, you know, there was a joke and you understood the joke. Now this is a simple exercise. It's students who want to further develop their basic understanding of this chapter can try this exercise on your own. Thank you very much.